Hey guys, Daft here. So today I want to talk about situational awareness, and this is building off of the last week's discussion about locational awareness or positional awareness. And if you haven't watched that video, I definitely recommend watching it. It talks about the things in your environment that don't change. And it really builds up to today's discussion about situational awareness, which is the things in your environment that are changing. And specifically, we're going to talk about, battle lines, but more importantly, the ground forces and air forces and the role they have in what you're doing as a pilot.
I should be able to.
So to start off, we want to develop a real basic understanding of where the battle lines are at on the map. And understanding what bases are in your vicinity, so having that positional awareness, but more importantly, who controls those bases. This builds a really general sense of where things are at, and you want to understand this without having to look at your map all the time. However, this isn't exact, because whether you control a base doesn't accurately represent whether there's friendly troops or enemy troops. For instance, if you own a base, there might be an enemy platoon there that holds the entire location. So what we can do is look at our map and we can activate a filter called enemy activity or ally activity. And what this does is it gives us an immediate sense of exactly what number of troops are where. So the darker a territory is, the more troops are there. And this basically will allow us to visually see exactly where the forces are at on the map. The problem with this is it doesn't tell us exactly what's there. So these videos are going to be split up into two. The first one I'm just going to talk about ground forces really quick, and the second one we're going to actually delve into air force. Okay, so ground forces are very important to understand. They don't play a huge role in what you're dealing with in the air because our priority is in taking down aircraft, but they do affect what we do. So when you're moving into a new operational area, you want to identify what ground forces are in the area, or if there's any nearby and things like that. The things you want to look out for are things that affect you, so sky guards, burster maxes, even heavies with lock-ons. Or even if it's a friendly base, you want to look out for hacked anti-air turrets, because if someone jumps in that, those can be pretty devastating as well. The nice thing about ground forces is they are generally stationary compared to you. Air, you can move very quickly. So if you end up, straying in next to where a sky guard is at, you should be able to run away before they kill you, at least if they're not expecting you. So flying into an area, identifying what ground forces are going to be there that can interfere with your operation is very essential. And you want to make these callouts to your friendlies so that you all can kind of get an idea of where these ground forces are at. Initially, we just want to use sight to identify this stuff. So look around, see if you can spot tanks on the ground. It's a lot easier too if they're firing. You can just look at the tracers, see exactly where they're coming from, and then just stay away from those areas. Sound is very important. Listen for, you should be able to identify what flak sounds like when it's hitting you, as opposed to say, small arms fire and things like that. Another thing that's kind of harder to get a hand on is when you're being locked. First off, you need to identify whether it's coming from the ground or coming from the air. Most often it's coming from the ground. However, if you make the assumption that it is, it can always end badly. Generally, if it's coming from the ground, you'll feel a kind of influence that heavy has a feel for. So if you fly into the area, you fly over a hill, all of a sudden you're within vision of the base, and you start to be locked. Or every time you fly over a certain area, you get a locked tone and someone fires at you. And if you run away from that area, there's nothing. Generally, that indicates that there's a heavy with a missile somewhere nearby. And they're a little harder to find, but once you do, they're relatively easy to deal with. Okay, so ground targets are generally stationary, and once we identify where they're at, we can avoid them. And the idea behind this is it is possible for us to tank damage and things like that. However, if we are damaged and we get jumped by air forces, then it makes it a lot harder. Alright, so I talked a little bit about the basic understanding of situational awareness and understanding the battle lines. We also talked about ground forces. If you've got anything to add, some suggestions for dealing with ground forces or even identifying where ground forces are at or how you do things, go ahead and leave a comment below. If you learned something from this video, leave a thumbs up, and if you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe to the channel so that way you don't miss anything. Alright, up next, I'm going to be talking about situational awareness in reference to air forces.